This is Cheryl.
This is Emma.
This is Catherine.
And we're the Baronesses. This episode is coming to you from Yuggera country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and recognise their continuing connection to land, sea, culture and community. We pay respects to elders past and present. Trigger warning. Listener discretion is advised as this podcast may contain sensitive topics relating to pregnancy loss, grief and trauma.
Welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 4. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
I'm going well, thank you.
Good. So Emma's doing the episode today, identifying as childless. That's what it's about.
Yep, that's it. So I'm going to get straight into that. So identifying as childless is childless. It's not a term that I have ever really embraced for myself. And the reason for that is because it just felt too sad. So as childless women, we carry a lot. Like, it's not an easy path. And it includes things like shame because we couldn't do it, and grief because things haven't worked out for us, and there's loss and there's trauma of all this experience. Resentment for me, it also included questions around self-worth. So that word, childless, for me, identifying as that embodies all of that pain. And I've always felt that owning that or leading with that makes me complicated or difficult. It makes me the one who it didn't work out for. It makes me the other. It makes me the one to be pitied. It makes me the one who people feel uncomfortable around. And so I've really tried to keep a lid on it. I've really tried to be normal, nothing to see here. I take a step back, take space when I need to. And for a really long time, I kept telling myself, it might still work out. I'm not childless yet. It might still work out, because I still had hope. But as I've gotten older, well into my 40s, I'm coming to accept that being childless is part of my story, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And it doesn't really make me anything other than what I tell myself about it. So I wanted to ask you both, how do you feel about that word? Do you identify as childless? I might go to you, Catherine, first.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of on the edge of whether or not I'm childless or child-free. I'm going to say I'm a fence sitter. I don't necessarily feel like I fit the mold for child-free, but I can also definitely say that I'm childless. Yeah. So I feel like I'm in that grey area between childless and child-free. How about you, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think that originally when I first was fresh out of the last IVF cycle and it failed, and I think I actually am a bit different, that I never really wanted to hold on to the hope. I felt sort of like the hope was kind of weighing me down. I really just wanted to cut it off. Like, I was like, I just don't want to hope anymore. It just feels like it was just keeping me in that cycle. And I was just like, no, I just want to embrace this. I just want to be like, I need to, because I think I knew that there was going to be a grieving period. And I was like, I just want to get this grieving period over so I can start living my life. So I kind of just was like, nope, I'm not going to hold on to hope anymore. But definitely when in that first 6 months after stopping, I didn't want to identify as childless. I think I kind of was like, oh no, I'm child-free. I'm not childless. And I think it was very much a denial thing. I just didn't want to admit that I was childless. I wanted to think that, no, I had made this choice willingly, that it wasn't, something that was, I did make the choice willingly, but it wasn't something that I would have wanted to make. I would have preferred if it just had happened. But yeah, in those first 6 months, I did feel like I just didn't want to be known as childless until I kind of dealt a bit with the grief, and then I sort of felt like it wasn't as scary anymore, and I was like, okay, I can sort of see myself as childless, but now I sort of feel like I have to go through a bit more of the childless grief before I can get to the child-free stage. Yeah. But I do want to start identifying as child-free eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I feel like we are conditioned as a society that having kids is the norm. And so when people can't do it or don't have it, it can be hard to know where we fit and how do we relate to others and how do they relate to us. You both know that that's often one of the first questions people ask when you meet them is, do you have kids? Yeah. Like, it's a seemingly easy and obvious talking point, but when the response is no, I think it can cause discomfort for the person who's asked, because it's like, oh, well, now what do I talk about? But also for us, because when I get asked that question, I'm like, oh, well, I don't know how to respond to that now. How much information do I give them? So I don't know if you guys have had that experience as well.
Yeah, and I've noticed as well, the older I get, it's less about do I have kids and more about how many kids do you have? Yeah. And for me, over the last few years, I've been trying to work on the sassy comebacks to try and make that person feel as uncomfortable as I do.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean. And I've kind of recently come to understand that you can have different responses in different situations with different people. So maybe it will be sassy, or maybe it will be just no, change the topic, ask them about something. Maybe no, I don't have kids, but I've got a beautiful fur baby. So there's lots of ways to manage that question, and maybe we can talk more about that in another episode. Yeah. So what I just wanted to go a little bit deeper into the word childless, some more reasons why it hasn't resonated for me. So the very word less implies to me that I am less because I don't have children. The word tells me that I am. I am less happy. These are the connotations. I am less fulfilled. I have less value. I have less worth. My life has less meaning. I have less purpose because I don't have kids. So I've never embraced that word because none of that was for me. And I can tell you that the older that I get, nothing could be further from the truth. I am lucky now to have cultivated a great life that is very fulfilling. So, yeah, that's why I had issues with that word. But I've come to realize that completely disowning that aspect or that part of my story, hiding that part of who I am, pretending to be normal, pretending it doesn't hurt when sometimes it does, I realized that may not be the best way forward either. I think I was scared about being judged or ostracized if I owned that. I was scared that I would be rejected or not included anymore. I was scared that I was going to lose friends. So these are all just stories that I was telling myself. But I'm actually finding that there's some unexpected medicine in embracing that part of my story too. I did want children. I didn't get them. This is not how I imagined my life would be. I do still feel sad or resentful sometimes. I do still feel like I've missed out sometimes. But owning all of that has given me greater freedom and greater authentic connections and a new level of self-acceptance. So owning that is actually helping me to heal. So I wanted to ask you, what has it been like for you? Cheryl, I'm going to go to you first. Do you have anything to say around that?
I think that for me, the embracing the childless label has allowed me to grieve, really. it's actually given myself permission to grieve. And I think that it's not that I denied myself to grieve originally. I think it was just too big. It was like sort of like myself protecting myself. Maybe I wasn't quite ready yet. It just needed to land first. But now that it's like, okay, I've let it land, I can sort of, interact with my grief more. And that kind of helps you process it, I think. And that's what we should try to do if we can, is to process the grief. Sometimes that's not possible because everyone's got lots of things going on in their life. But I think that it's also let me kind of deal with other things that have come up, because I feel like the grief has also opened up old wounds as well.
Yeah, it does that.
Yeah.
Do you know, I used to worry, I think if I truly acknowledged the grief, I used to worry it would swallow me up and it would become all that I am, but that hasn't been true either. So that's good to know. What about you, Catherine?
Yeah, look, I actually feel that the more I engage with people who don't have kids, the more validated and normal I feel. I think in some ways, seeing a lot of my friends and family, having babies and then more babies and more babies, that can be really difficult when you're grieving because you're just having recurrent losses, and that can be really very difficult. But then finding and meeting other people who have had similar experiences has really helped me to process that and to make me feel like I am not so alone.
Yeah, it normalizes your experience, and
Absolutely.
that's so important. I think, we are a minority group, and as a minority group, you need to have those pockets of the world where you belong. So that's really important. As I started taking steps toward accepting this, self-acceptance, I originally went looking in the child-free community, and I found people in there who didn't have kids, didn't want kids. This was the life that they chose. And when I was in those groups, I'm hearing people who are empowered, they're happy, they travel, they talk about having more time, more flexibility, more financial freedom. They talk about their personal fulfillment, their creative pursuits. And it really opened my eyes to some different examples of how people live their lives. Like, not everybody wants this nuclear family unit. And I actually found that really interesting and really refreshing. And it then kind of led me to question, what if this wasn't the norm? What if more people in my life hadn't had children either? What if I'd had more adult role models who were child-free? I wonder if that would have made life different for me. So I just want to put that to you first. What if it wasn't the norm? I don't quote me on the stats and figures, but I've seen somewhere that say not having children is like 20% and those who do have children is 80%. What if those stats were flipped? Like, what if we were the 80%? Would you feel differently? Would you think differently? How would that make life for you?
I think it would kind of eliminate a lot of the isolation that we feel, which is a very big part of the grief, I think. Yeah. But it wouldn't change the fact that I really wanted it and I didn't get it. So I would still be grieving, but there would be less of an isolation aspect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that would mean that we would become the norm, and the people that do have kids, then potentially they would be the ones that are ostracized or feeling isolated, rather than the people that don't have kids. So yeah, when you flip the script, it can definitely paint a different picture.
And for me, I honestly thought, gosh, you know what? If not many other people were doing it, I actually don't know if I would have wanted it that badly. I think I would have taken more time to really sit with that and question that. And it would have been a more conscious choice rather than an expected or assumed choice if less people were doing it. I wonder as well the impact that would have on society if as a society in general we'd have a greater sense of community, people banding together to help each other like it was long ago, rather than people being contained in their family
Yeah,
unit.
because it is very much about nuclear family. Even you don't really connect with your relatives as much as some other cultures would in our
I
Western
agree.
culture.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think as well, for me personally, I would have had a greater sense of self-worth, I feel like, and I would have had a better relationship with my body. I feel like my body, for a long time I was quite disconnected from my body. It had let me down. So I think that would have been different.
Yeah. I think that it's like it's seen as the option is to opt out of having children, but it actually should be the option should be opt in. Because I feel like a lot of people do have children and they didn't want them. And like for example, in my own family, like my mother was a very regretful parent. She didn't want children, but I think because it was like the norm and it was expected, so she just did it. But I think if she actually, if the script was flipped, say for example that we lived in a society where most people don't have kids, she wouldn't have had them.
Interesting. Yeah. There's probably a lot of people actually in that situation. Yeah. So, for me, accepting the term childless, I think, has really been coming to terms with my own circumstances, being more accepting of myself, my life, and my experience. I'd say I'm still not entirely comfortable with the word because it doesn't truly reflect who I am or all that my life is. But I accept it as part of my story, I think. And what I've also realized is that it's probably me who focuses on that word, and it's me kind of hyper focusing on the difference. It's probably what goes on in my head more than the people who I'm interacting with. So I've realized that there's kind of power in changing my story, and there's power in what I choose to focus on. So that has been quite freeing as well. So I wanted to ask you both, what would you say that childlessness has afforded you? Can you pull any positives from the experience? Like, I know it's a bloody hard journey, but if you had to look for what you do have, what you are proud of yourself for, what does make your heart happy, where do you feel abundance, where is your life bigger? I'm really interested to hear what you'd have to say.
Oh gosh, I think it's given me freedom. It's given me opportunities to pursue other passions. It's given me, peace. I think peace is a big thing because I'm a massive introvert. I get very depleted around big crowds, and I think sometimes would I have actually enjoyed having children sometimes, like, because kids do deplete you a lot. They take a lot of energy and time and effort, and yes, there are many joys that come with having children, but they do kind of rob you of your peace a bit. And I think that I really enjoy my peace. It also, I think the journey of becoming childless after infertility has actually brought me and my partner very close together. It does tear people apart sometimes, but it's kind of brought us more closer together. Like, that's not to say we didn't have our problems. It was hard, but ultimately it did bring us closer.
Well, that's beautiful. You're lucky
Yeah.
because not everyone has that
No,
experience.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Catherine?
I feel like that it's giving me the opportunity to be able to dream again. So even though at the time when we were trying to have a baby, our dream was very much solely focused on that. And now that that journey has very definitely concluded, now I feel like I have the opportunity to be able to dream again and to be able to dream new possibilities that we can do and that we can do either independently or together. So whether that's creative pursuits or travel or, our work, it just gives us more flexibility to be able to think of the possibilities and see how we can actualize those possibilities.
I think for me, I've actually realized the positive qualities that I have, like and other childless women. Not only do we carry the heavy stuff, but we also carry some really kick-ass stuff as well. So I've realized how resilient I am and how strong I am and how capable and intelligent and courageous, and I have tenacity and I have courage and I have guts and I self-advocate and I research. And this journey has given me a depth of empathy and compassion for others. I don't shy away from the tough stuff. I can profoundly support others going through a hard time because I know what it's like to be there. I think as well, I've learnt I follow the things that I love. I read a book by Rebecca Campbell called Light is the New Black, and she talks about do what lights you up. So I started to do that, and I would just follow my curiosities, and they have led me to the most awesome places and the most awesome people. They've been like these little breadcrumbs to a really amazing life. I'm really grateful for that. So yeah. So I guess as we wrap this up, I did sit down and reflect, and I'd think, so what are my main takeaways and my main lessons or learnings from this experience that have helped me, I guess, to grow into a more well-rounded human? So I came up with a list of 10, but before I share mine, I wanted to ask you if you had a learning or a takeaway from this experience. And there's probably not going to be just one, but if you had to grab for one.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of like I was thinking the other day actually about this and about what does grief give me. And it's not just childless grief, it can be any grief. But I sort of feel like it actually makes me a better person. I have more empathy for other people. The more things you go through, the better you are at understanding where someone else is at. And there's been times in my life where I've seen someone who's in pain and no one else sees them because they haven't been through that. But you can see it, and then you kind of make that connection and you kind of go, hey, you'll get through this. And it's just it's a really beautiful experience to be there for someone else who's struggling. And it actually, even as much as grief kind of disconnects you from other people, it can also bring you together.
Yeah. Profoundly.
Yeah.
When it counts.
It's not a surface level connection. It's a deep connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Cheryl. And I feel like, it's not just the empathy, it's also the compassion and the caring and the kindness. And when you take a step back, I feel like it gives you a better perspective to be able to see both sides of the story. So you can, on the one hand, see and understand why people choose to do a particular thing, but then you can also understand why people might choose not to do that. Yeah. So it gives you a lot more perspective from different angles and have a balanced perspective that you might not otherwise have the opportunity to do.
Yeah, that's so true. All right, so to close us out, I'm going to give you guys my top 10 takeaways, if that's okay. Okay, so what have I gained from this experience? 1, I've learned that life does not always work out the way you expect it will, and that can still be okay. 2, I've learned that life isn't always fair. 3, I've learned that it's important to feel your feelings. I used to worry that my feelings would never stop, but that just isn't true. 4, I've learned that there's power in the thoughts that you think and in the story that you tell yourself, and there's so much power in being aware of that. If the thoughts that I'm thinking and the story that I'm telling is making me feel like crap, then I can change it, tell a different story. 5, I've learned about being really kind and compassionate to myself. I was never very good at that, but I know how to be a good friend to others. I know how to be supportive. I know how to be a beautiful friend when people are going through a hard time. And I've learned to be a better friend to myself, to offer myself some of those same words that I would give to others. 6, I've learned to listen to my body, to be gentle with it, to honor its needs. My body is my friend, and things go better when we work together. 7, I've learnt that there's so much power in acceptance. 8, I've learnt that each soul must walk its path. So many of us face challenges and hardships, and oftentimes people just don't talk about it. We don't know what's going on for someone else. 9, I've learnt that I can cultivate a great life that is meaningful to me and full of rich experiences. It does get better. 10, most of all, I have learnt to be grateful for the small things, for the everyday things. I've learnt to notice what I do have, and it's often the littlest things, the things that we overlook. Sorry, girls. The things that we take for granted. They're actually our hugest blessings. Gratitude helps to shift my focus and to realize that I have a great life and I've worked bloody hard to cultivate that. So I'm going to leave you there with that top 10. Have you got any final thoughts before I wrap it up?
No, I think that you've covered it really well, actually. Yeah, it's it's not to like diminish anyone if you're like feeling really a lot of grief. That's okay, but I think that it's nice to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, so I did want to say that, like, I think I've said it already, but I'm well into my 40s, so I'm a long way down this road now. So that is what I wanted to do, is give hope and be an example for people who may not be as far along.
Yeah, and it does give, like, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty early, and it makes me feel good that there is like a roadmap that I can follow, that it will be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly gets better. All right, so I'm going to just say thank you to you all for joining us today, and that we're going to look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks for listening. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram, The Baronesses Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or comments or would like to be a guest in our show, drop us an email, baronessespod@gmail.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.